Most of you who are here and the room's filling up, so love to see that. Most of you already know who I am because, of course, you're attending because you got an invite on LinkedIn or, you've been getting emails from us. We've chatted before in the past. You already work with social advisors. So I'm not important here. My guest is important here. Dr. Jack Singer, I don't say this to everybody. I'm going to say it to you. You're one of my favorite guys. I love the podcast we do together. Or I'm sorry, webinar in this case. This is a third in a series of four. And it is three key elements for resilient financial advisors. And I think, Jack, this is really timely. Though we planned it a few months ago and put the date on the calendar, this is really timely, with the last, let's say 30, 45, 60 days of market turmoil that we've seen, inflation. These things, when combined, I'm sure, have a tendency to cause a lot of stress in that daily life of the advisor. What upset client are they talking to today? I think probably is one of those concerns. We all get that phone call and we go, oh gosh, and so there's a lot of stress in this business anyway. But when you mix combinations of, not a great market, inflation, people worried about what their financial future might look like, retirement, you are just, the timing is ideal, Jack, for you to join us again. So everybody who's here, let me introduce you to Dr. Jack Singer. I've known Jack now a few years. Jack used to work with your favorite sports teams. I know a couple Packer fans on here. Jack worked with the Packers in the past for my buddy Andy that's here. Worked with professional sports team up until 2008, and probably still Jack worked with teams after that. But got some calls with the market in 2008 from a couple financial firms. That, again, a very stressful time. Jack's a world-renowned psychologist and really helps people deal with the stress of the day-to-day and the work that we do. So, Jack, I'm going to close my mouth. I can talk way too much, so I'm going to close my mouth. If you've got any questions whatsoever, you can put it in the question box or type it in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that. And, without further ado, Dr. Jack Singer, take it away.
Thank you so much, Charlie. It's always a pleasure working with you and your wonderful guests and with social advisors. Post parties have been a lot of fun for me to do as well. It's a wonderful, wonderful situation, a wonderful platform, and I'm very thrilled to be able to work with you anytime I get the opportunity. Awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to be presenting the third webinar in our Stress Mastery series. We're calling this one Mastering the Three Key Habits of Burnout Resilient Financial Professionals. Burnout Resilient. And I'm going to fill this with practical steps you can take immediately to enhance your career and your life. Now, I'll break it up into segments, and Charlie and I will have a discussion, or he'll feed some questions that he sees after each segment, so you get a chance to write these things down in the chat box. Also, if there are any questions you have that you don't want to put in the chat box, you want to ask me personally and privately, my email address is drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com. By the way, I'm going to offer you some wonderful bonuses just for attending, and then I'll stick around. We'll talk about those bonuses at the end. But one of them that I want to tell you about up front, because we have limited time and I tend to speak fast so I can give you a lot of information in a short period of time. It's going to be hard to take notes, but everything that I'm going to talk about and much more is in my book, The Financial Advisor's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide. I don't know if you can see that with my virtual background.
Yeah, it's kind of getting lost a little bit, Jack, in the background.
Okay. All right. So the Financial Advisor's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide, it's a $37 book. If you get it through Amazon, I'll send you the e-version for $15 if you're interested. This will be life-changing, game-changing for you. There's no other book like it for financial advisors. My whole interest is helping you with the emotional part of being a success in life, not only on the job, but in life in general. So you just have to email me again, and I'll tell you how you can get the book, drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com. And I'm also going to provide Charlie's clients with a very special bonus. I guess I'm not saving the bonuses till the end. And that is, if any of you would like a completely confidential, complimentary coaching session with me, I'll be happy to do it to answer any of your questions. No obligation, no pressure. Just tell me what's on your mind and I'll tell you how to fix it. And as we've discussed in some of the earlier programs, in my 47-year career as a professional sports psychologist, I've helped hundreds and hundreds of elite athletes, including 3 Olympic gold medal winners, and hundreds of advisors using the same exact template for success as I used with the 3 Olympic gold medal winners. And a key piece of that process is, how do you avoid burnout? You can imagine that elite athletes, with all of the competition and all of the pressure, can easily get burned out. So that's one of the things that we always worry about with athletes. And I concern myself with that issue with advisors as well. Would it surprise you to know that your current stress, this goes for anyone listening to me, your current stress is not caused by dealing with difficult and worried clients these days. It's not caused by the global political environment, and it's not even caused by work-life balance issues. Now, you may say, well, wait a minute, I have all of those things going on. They cause me stress. No, they don't. Shortly, I'll explain to you what causes your stress. It's not the situations, and it's not the events, but I'll explain what it is. My goals are to teach you what I call the 3 R's of burnout resilience. The first is to recognize the warning signs of occupational burnout. Secondly is to revise the self-limiting beliefs and talk habits that you've developed over the years that lead to stress. And third is to recognize, or re-energize yourself with a simple mental toughness routine that I've taught to hundreds and hundreds of athletes and advisors. It will quickly derail toxic self-talk habits which lead to your stress. So let's talk about burnout resilient habit number 1. Understanding the warning signs of burnout and how your personality and your profession can put you at high risk. Burnout has been described as a disease of disengagement. It's a chronic process that includes unplugging and disconnecting from work, friends, family, and even health. The most important part of this definition is the word chronic. Burnout arises slowly and insidiously. We don't realize it's happening. Just like cancer, for example, can be very insidious with no symptoms, but it's brewing. So most of us don't recognize the warning signs. We must listen to our loved ones when they tell us they're noticing changes. And to a large extent, burnout is the result of a mismatch between the demands of the job and your available resources for dealing with and adapting to those demands. In fact, my doctoral dissertation research was done exactly on that, looking at the demands of the job and the opportunities the job offers and matching it up with people's personality. And what group did I study? I studied tax collection agents from the IRS. So the IRS funded my research for me to discuss what kind of stress the tax collection agents are under. And don't worry, I fixed it so they'll never be okay. And you and I, when we get audited, we don't have to worry about it now. So anyway, the job since the pandemic has filled you with unprecedented and unexpected demands. Keep in mind that burnout is not a personal failing. Burnout tends to hit the best employees, those with enthusiasm who accept responsibility readily, and those whose job is an important part of their identity. In fact, burnout is more probable with folks obsessed with their jobs. Let me tell you about some recent research by the American Psychological Association. It shows that about 70% of all Americans feel disengaged from their jobs, which is a major symptom of burnout. And we know from a 2018 advisor wellness study of financial advisors by FlexShares that advisors reported an average stress level 23% higher than the national norms. So financial professionals are very vulnerable to burnout, 23% more than the average person working in this country, and 70% of those complain about stress and burnout. So think of your emotional and physical energy reserves like a bank account. If you don't add reserves to it by relaxing and refreshing yourself and using the mental kinds of things that I teach you, your account can become drained, and burnout is the result. Core symptoms of burnout, including feeling fatigued regardless of how much rest or sleep you get, having a lack of excitement and disengagement about your work and career despite major successes. You exert significant effort, but you're not getting recognition for your work. I have a lot of advisors whom I coach who tell me they're working just as hard as the person in the next desk, and they don't get the recognition or they don't get the results, and they think it's something about themselves. I have to help them fix that. You have trouble focusing on your job or your clients and all of its requirements. You find yourself being cynical about your career and wonder, maybe I should make a change. I've had so many advisors hire me for coaching, thinking I really need to get out of this business. And in a few sessions, they start taking off in their career because it's all been a mindset problem that they didn't realize. Burnout symptoms also include a sense of inefficiency. Burned out people tend to feel like they're exerting significant effort, but not making any progress or gaining any recognition, as I just mentioned. Lack of attention to the job, inability to control your attention to the job and its requirements, finding ways to distract yourself from the job. Instead of making calls to prospective clients, you're playing games on the computer, for example. It's a way of avoiding or procrastinating things that stress you and worry you. And I've had advisors find all kinds of reasons to avoid even going into the office and avoiding certain clients. Physical clues can include frequent headaches, digestive issues, difficulty sleeping, chest pain. Psychological indicators can include panic attacks, anger, irritability, feeling hopeless or helpless, and a general loss of enjoyment. So if someone you live with is complaining to you about these things, they notice that your personality is becoming flat or you're getting disengaged from the family and others, this is a warning sign that this kind of thing may be happening. And although both our society and your profession seem to foster burnout, there's a lot you can do to protect yourself, and you don't necessarily have to make monumental changes like leaving your job. So let's talk about ways that the first secret for advisors who are resilient can avoid burnout. Again, all of this and much more is mentioned in my book, which, if you're interested, just email me at drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com. Keep in mind, burnout is not a personal failing, like I told you before. This is something you can't help until you understand what you've been doing or what you haven't been doing inside your mind that has made all the difference. And the good news is that you can immediately begin to prevent burnout, and that's the focus of today's webinar. Recall that I said your current stress is not caused by dealing with difficult and worried clients during unpredictable markets. It's not caused by the global political environment, and it's not caused by things like work-life stress issues. But what it is caused by is the conversations you have in your head about these events and situations. It's always the conversations in your head that determine your ultimate moods, attitudes, and behaviors. Are those conversations healthy? Then you have good moods, good attitudes, good behaviors. Are your conversations toxic? Then you don't have good attitudes, behaviors, and moods. You have negative ones, self-defeating ones. We talked about this in the last webinar, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of it, but I want to repeat some of it so you'll understand. In psychology and in neuroscience, we now know that most of the deficiencies and limitations and problems that people have are essentially rooted in their self-talk. The little voice inside your head that's always talking, unfortunately for most of us, talking in negative terms like, don't try this, don't risk that, what if this happens, I hope I didn't make a mistake, I shouldn't do this. But this is under your control. You can learn about these habits and change them. We now know in the field of psychotherapy, by the way, that we can help people overcome their problems in a matter of weeks, when it used to be years because we thought these problems were buried in their self-conscious. We now know that any problem that, for example, someone who wants me to coach them, I can tell within the first 10 minutes of discussing with them where the problem is rooted, and it's in the self-talk. And then we work on fixing those unfortunate habits that have been repeated thousands of times. And once you recognize the self-talk that causes your problems, you can choose to modify it. In a few minutes, I'll show you a method of doing this at warp speed so you can employ it whenever you have any of these negative emotions. Think about athletes, for example. Think about two athletes, say Olympic athletes. One wins the gold and one wins the bronze. What's the difference between those two? Why didn't the bronze person win the gold? They have the exact same training, the exact same experience. Their bodies are built the same way. They understand everything. What's the difference? The difference is the mindset, because the one who doesn't come in first tweaked their mind in a negative way, saying something negative like, what if I don't win? Everyone's counting on me. That's all you need to do, and you cause your body to tighten up which causes you not to be able to perform at highest performance. And for advisors, you tighten up your brain, which causes you not to perform at the highest level. You avoid doing things you want to do, or you don't talk the way you want to talk if you're giving a workshop, for example, and you're nervous about it. And financial advisors are especially high risk for burnout, both because of the constant grind and unpredictability of world events and markets, and dealing with difficult clients, and because of the personality traits that most of you have. Again, I have a whole section on advisor personality traits in my book and what to do about it. You don't have to change your personality, but you can change certain behaviors. One of the key solutions is to develop high quality relationships in which it feels safe to discuss burnout. Many advisors are very private people. They don't talk to their colleagues about things that they think will make them look in a poor light. You have to find a mentor that you really trust who understands what you're going through and be able to discuss it, or discuss it with someone at home who's a good listener. Financial advisors also possess, many of them, most of them, type A personalities, which is part of that as being a perfectionist. Perfection is the enemy of being really good, and perfectionists cause their own problems. I have a whole chapter on that in the book. This perfectionism can make you feel like your work or your AUM is never good enough. This sort of perfectionism is a major risk factor for burnouts, and they need to take a close look at their own iceberg core beliefs. We call them iceberg core beliefs because these are beliefs that mainly are unconscious below the surface. There's only a little bit of it above the surface, like an iceberg. What are some examples of iceberg core beliefs? Asking for help is a sign of weakness. I need to fly under the radar and avoid confrontations at all costs. I'm a product of my DNA and my upbringing. I can't change anything, no matter what I do. All of these are false, but these are beliefs that a lot of us have ingrained in us since we're little. I must be liked by everybody or there's something wrong with me. And of course, the worst one is, if it's not perfect, I feel like I failed. So the struggle for perfectionism is a major source of stress, depending on the toxic conversations you give yourself. So managing your stress comes from the inside out. Only when you take charge of the internal self-talk and stop poisonous, self-destructive, toxic self-talk like, what if, or I hope this didn't go wrong, or I shouldn't have done that. That's the cause of all the problems. And our irrational beliefs and thoughts lead to toxic self-talk, which chemically and electronically affects every cell instantly, even if those beliefs and thoughts are irrational. Your brain doesn't judge whether they're rational or not. It just goes with the flow. So if you're a golfer, for example, and you come to a water hazard and you say, gee, I hope I don't hit it into the water, your brain goes on lockdown because it thinks there's an emergency. It doesn't differentiate between a lion chasing you and you making an errant golf shot. If you said it, you're going to turn on the fight or flight nervous system. And when that happens, what happens? Unconsciously, you're tightening muscles because muscles have to tighten to fight off the danger. And if you're tightening your muscles, your swing has now changed and you're much more likely to hit it in the water than if you never said anything. So the ability of the brain to redirect and generate new networks is within our control. That's how you change your mindset, and you change your mindset by the way you talk to yourself. The average person has 60,000 thoughts a day, and research shows that the vast majority of those thoughts are negative and lead to self-doubt, worry, insecurity, and lack of confidence. And it's built into us because when we lived in caves, we had to be observant of what was going on around us. So we always worried about things. We don't have to do that anymore, but many of us continue to do it. So here's the way it works again. A situation occurs, say world events cause a sharp market drop. You immediately give yourself toxic thoughts about the situation. The amygdala, the old part of the brain, the reptile brain that's in there from thousands of years ago, is activated, and you're frozen with fear or uncertainty or afraid that a certain client is going to call you and blast you for not preparing the portfolio for this event. And every time you allow toxic thoughts to enter your mind, these kinds of things happen. Now, there's a price to be paid for that besides anxiety and stress. There's a physical price to be paid for that, because every time you do that, you're turning on the fight or flight system, which changes what's happening inside of you physiologically. It changes the internal pharmacy within. You're starting to release hormones that are not healthy if there's no real danger. For example, you turn on your cardiovascular system and raise your heartbeat and your blood pressure, because if the brain thinks that you have to flee or fight, that's a good thing to happen. But if you're not in danger and you're turning this on 50 times a day because you're upset or worried every time, you're prone for cardiovascular problems and chronic high blood pressure. Your GI system, when you turn on the fight or flight, the GI system sends blood out to the muscles and the arms. It's not needed for digesting food at that time. Well, if you're turning this on constantly during the day, when you're upset about something, waiting in lines, not getting what you wanted to get, somebody not treating you the right way, you keep turning it on, blood keeps leaving your GI tract. The end result of that is gastritis, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, and you can go through any system we have in the body, and they're all impacted by that, which is why most of my referrals as a psychologist over the years from medical people have come from doctors who say, these people have symptoms, but I can't find a medical cause. The reason is their thinking has caused these problems. You can even cause cancer. And one of the most common ones that I'll mention is when you turn on the fight or flight nervous system, adrenaline squirts into your bloodstream. Why? Because adrenaline is a hormone that makes you alert and awake so that you can see the danger. It's not good to be sleepy when there's something dangerous going on. Well, if it's time to go to bed for you and you're worried about something that happened during the day, or maybe thinking about something you're not looking forward to tomorrow, you're turning on the fight or flight nervous system, squirting adrenaline into your bloodstream, and guess what happens? Insomnia. You wonder why you can't fall asleep, or you fall asleep and you get up between 2 and 3 in the morning. It's because you've been worried and not taking control of the toxic thoughts. So here's a simple but important exercise for each of you to use at bedtime. Have a little notepad next to your bed and write down what went well today. So many of us focus on negative events or anticipated negative events leading to toxic thoughts, especially when you're trying to fall asleep. You have difficulty falling asleep. You wake up between 2 and 3. Let's change this to positive, nutritious thoughts. What 3 things went well today? What role did I play in that success? Give yourself all the credit. Don't tell yourself you were just lucky. And by the way, all of this material, and especially the physiological things that happen to us when our thinking isn't right, all of this material I put into a game-changing client event, because as you know, most client events are a plate liquor in the back of a restaurant, and people come for a free meal. They usually don't even bring guests, but if they do, they leave after they eat. So I decided many years ago, why not provide something of value to your clients and their guests? And so I have a program called How to Live Much Longer Than Your Kids Hoped You Would. It's a funny title, but it's a serious subject. It's the psychology of life extension. Yeah. It's cutting edge psychological techniques to live longer and healthier. So you think that packs the house? It always does. Do you think that everyone wants to invite a guest to that because they want to hear this? Yes. Do you think many of these guests say to themselves, oh my goodness, the most I ever get from my advisor is a wine tasting. Your advisor really cares about you. Sure. So it's a win-win-win. If you want to know more about that client event, just contact me, drjack@advisingadvisors.com. So ladies and gentlemen, the only barrier between your dreams and your reality is that negative voice that you're not yet controlling. So let's cut it at this point and see what kinds of questions we have.
There have been some questions, Jack. So I was waiting for the break, man, but I didn't want to stop your flow. First off, I was thinking the golf analogy before you even brought it up, right? So, and you know, as a person, I've been golfing 3 or 4 years now is all, but if I hit one bad ball, the next one is much likelier to be bad because that's in my head, right?
That's right.
Along those lines, Jack, can you explain more about how our internal conversations always determine whether we'll be stressed by an event or a situation? And Jonathan, thank you for the question.
Yeah, let's say the sample you just gave me of the golf. Yeah. Okay, so you make an errant shot. Now you have a choice on your next shot. Are you going to focus on what happened in the past, or are you going to think about what you're going to do now, or you're going to worry about the future? This is how your thoughts control what's going to happen. So it's not the situation that you had a bad shot that's the problem. The problem is that you're thinking about the bad shot, or you're beating yourself up over the bad shot with statements like, I should have used a different club. I wasn't relaxed when I shot. I forgot to breathe and do my pre-shot routine. Any kind of thinking like that is going to screw you up for the next shot because you're tightening muscles unconsciously. Yeah. So it's never the situation, but it's staying in the present and not looking in your rearview mirror or looking out the front window. What am I doing right now? If you're worried about what's going to happen in the future or what happened in the past, you're not focused on the present.
Yeah, very cool. A couple others here, Jack, if you're set. You suggested our thoughts and self-talk can affect our physical health.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about how that happens, the physiology behind it?
Yeah, the physiology is, as I started to briefly explain, is that electronically and chemically, every thought that goes through our mind translates to every cell. You've probably noticed, not only in athletics, but in anything in life, that if you start worrying about something, things happen inside your body. You don't feel right. You know what anxiety feels like. You know what stress feels like. Well, insidiously, also things are happening with hormones inside your body, and it's changing things. You could get a headache, for example, and say, I don't know why I have a headache, or you can have back pain flare up. What we see in neuroscience is that weak areas of the body tend to get exacerbated when you're under stress and you're putting yourself under stress with those thoughts. And you can see it in a lot of different areas. Let me give you a quick example. I'm glad you brought this up. Many, many years ago, when I was living in Florida, I was invited to go to the ABC affiliate in Miami and pitch a programming idea that I have way before Dr. Phil was heard of. I wanted to be a psychologist on the airwaves and have people call in with problems or bring a patient on with problems and tell you how to relieve it. And they were really excited about this possibility. No one was doing this on TV at the time. So on my way to drive down from Fort Lauderdale to Miami, I did the cardinal rule of what not to do. Instead of going down there with healthy thoughts like, I can't wait to get down there and show these people how great this can be, and I'll get the job, and I'll become famous, da-da, da-da, da-da. What did I do? What if I don't know what to say when I get there? What if there's no teleprompter? They didn't tell me what I would to expect. I don't know how to handle this. And when I got there, I was a basket case and could barely talk. They looked at me like, who is this guy? I was, I could barely get words out of my mouth. That was a physiological response. My throat choked up to emotional negative thoughts. So that's a great example of how it translates.
And Jack, I think, I hate to admit it, I'll be, maybe not, but I'll be 50 this year. Right. And so I've been working with advisors. Gosh, it blows my mind, but for 25 years at this point, a lot of that negative self-talk, almost self-doubt, I feel like has diminished because of my age and experience. Almost not the consciousness of it, but just the age and experience that brings more confidence to the interactions we have. And we've got speaking gigs coming up, and that's exciting, where I would be extremely nervous about it in the past. Now I'm excited to go do it. And so Eric hit 50 in February. Eric's going to welcome me to the club pretty quick, but he says the same. One thing that Eric brought up was that all that self-doubt, right, or that self-talk, if you don't land that client, can lead to depression too, right? Which is also a chemical, physical reaction.
Absolutely, no question. Most depression, by the way, you don't need medication. You need to understand that your thoughts cause the depression. I've been a practicing psychologist for 47 years, whether it's with athletes or advisors or anyone else. I've almost never had to recommend medication for a patient with depression or a severe anxiety. It's always controlled by their thinking. But you raised a very interesting point. For example, I'm a professional speaker. So I go to advisor meetings and I'm a keynote speaker, or I go into a big advisor group and do some training. Now, I have two choices when I get ready to go out on the stage and perform. One choice is to say, what if I screw this up? What if I forget what I'm supposed to say? If I do that, I now know I turn on all the alarm systems and I have a much higher probability of making that happen. But what I do when I feel even a little bit of anxiety in my stomach, besides doing the breathing that I'm going to teach you in a minute to calm that down, I explain to myself that amount of anxiety is my excitement and anticipation. I can't wait to teach this audience all of these critical skills that I know they never heard before, and I'm going to teach it to them. So I put a different label on the anxiety. Rather than saying this means I'm in trouble, I'm saying I can't wait to get out there. I'm excited. And if you
Wonderful. And
talk to actors, it's the same thing. Actors, you know, when they're in movies or on TV or whatever, especially doing live performances, they're always worried backstage if I forget a line or whatever, but I teach them to change that to something very positive, like I'm excited, I'm talented, I can't wait for them to enjoy what I'm going to talk about. And that's all this means. So it's how you interpret what's going on inside of you makes all the difference.
all right, Jack, just replying to a couple of more statements than questions. So I do have one more question. What are some of the examples of illnesses, Jack, that can be caused or made worse by toxic thinking? We talked about depression a little bit.
Yeah, depression, but depression is an emotional illness. Let's talk about physical illnesses. I mentioned gastritis, irritable bowel syndrome, colitis. I had a lot of referrals from gastrointestinal doctors who say, you know, these people have symptoms, but I can't find any blood work or anything that, or any, I've done colonoscopies and endoscopies. I can't find anything wrong with them. It's because their life has put them under, they put themselves under stress because of what's going on in their life. And once you talk to these people about these things, you can eradicate the symptoms. I had a client once, he was a 19-year-old kid who had colitis, where he's bleeding all the time when he went to the bathroom and he couldn't control it, and he couldn't go to school because he had to run to the bathroom all the time. He was on tons of steroids to help with that. I did 2 hypnotic recordings for him. Incidentally, when I work with people, including athletes, I make hypnotic recordings that they can practice to change their mindset. I made 2 hypnotic recordings for him. He got off all his medicine and didn't have to go back to the gastroenterologist anymore. So that's an example of the power of this. I have a client in Las Vegas who's had cancer. First, he came to me because he had collapsing discs in his back and he asked if hypnosis would help. I said, I don't know, but you can't lose anything, so let's do it. To make a long story short, he didn't need medication. I fixed the problem. He was able to go out rock climbing after that. Years later, he developed cancer. And he said, Dr. Jack, is it possible that what you did for me could help with cancer? I said, let's do it. Anything's possible. So we made a few hypnotic recordings. That was about 12 years ago. He's still around, doesn't have a recurrence of his cancer, writes to me several times a week telling me he thinks I'm the best thing since sliced bread. So there are all kinds of physical illnesses, chronic illnesses. I worked with tons of these over the years. And again, if anyone has a personal issue in that regard, or they have a family member they want to ask about, just email me at drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com and we'll talk about it. So let me get to habit number 3 so we don't run out of time, okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Habit number 3 is Dr. Jack's easy to learn, simple 7-step mental toughness strategy. Now you may say 7 steps. Yeah, but you can do this whole thing in 5 minutes. Okay, so let me teach you how to do this. This is quickly going to reduce stress, self-doubt, worry, anxiety, whatever negative emotions creep in. First of all, let me tell you what mental toughness is. It's a term that's used with athletes a lot, but I work it with everybody. Mental toughness is a skill that separates good performance from championship performance. When I go into an advisory firm and coach them and teach them, I teach them some of the traits that have been proven in tons of research to differentiate between someone who performs well to someone who's really on a championship level, and how you can learn to develop that. And mental toughness is a big part of it. It develops resilience to any potentially stressful situation or event. And these situations, remember, don't cause the stress. It's your reaction to it. Using mental toughness is a huge skill to help you react in a healthy way to these situations. It involves looking at every challenge as an opportunity instead of getting overwhelmed by it. It involves the ability to sort of bring your A game consistently. It's the ability to bounce back quickly from any adversity, such as dealing with difficult clients or issues with the pandemic. Again, as I keep mentioning, all of this is in my book. So, if you're interested, let me know. Whenever you experience a negative emotion like anxiety, fear, upset, impatience, anger, depression, step number 1, recognize the emotion you're feeling. Actually write it down. I'm feeling stressed right now. Number 2, recognize the thoughts that preceded that emotion. What were you thinking about? I just got off the phone with an angry client who is blaming me for their portfolio tanking during what's just happened in the market. Okay, that's the thought that preceded it. Step number 3, Have a number 64 rubber band. What's the number 64 rubber band? The kind of rubber band that comes in the mail. It's a fat rubber band, so it can sit loosely on your wrist. As soon as you recognize the negative thoughts you're having, the self-defeating, poisonous thoughts, snap away at that rubber band. I know it's going to sting, but you have to sting for your subconscious mind to say, whoa, I don't want to think that way anymore. So you may have to snap a few times. So now you've stopped the thought dead in its tracks. Now, step number 4. Take some nice, slow, deep breaths. It's called diaphragmatic breathing. In through your nose to the count of 4. Hold it for 4 seconds, and then out through your mouth like you're blowing through a straw to the count of 7. In through your nose, hold it, out through your mouth to the count of 7. And the way you know you're doing this kind of diaphragmatic breathing is if you fold your hands over your stomach, your hands should be moving out when you breathe in and coming back when you breathe out. Musicians and professional singers learn how to do this kind of breathing. You need to learn how to do this kind of breathing. If when you breathe deeply, the only thing that's moving is your shoulders, that's shallow breathing. That's not helping your anxiety. It's making it worse. You need to learn how to do diaphragmatic breathing. Just fold your hands over your stomach and practice while you're watching TV. Step number 5 is something that nobody ever thinks about. Challenge the thoughts. Most of our negative thoughts are irrational. They're not based on logic. So you ask yourself questions like this. And again, I'm going fast, but I can send you the list of these if you're interested. Where's the evidence to support these anxiety-producing thoughts? What's the probability that what I'm afraid of is actually going to happen? Could I be exaggerating the situation in my mind? Am I turning a minor setback into a major catastrophe in my mind? Many of us catastrophize. We start thinking the worst case scenario, even though there's a low probability of it happening, like the pandemic came or inflation came. If you're going to, am I going to lose my practice over this? That's like going to the worst possible situation, which has a tiny percentage of happening, but you're thinking 100%. Is there an alternative explanation that could explain what happened or what's going to happen next? Are my conclusions based on my emotions rather than on facts? Okay. So let's say a patient got off the phone with you. That patient was angry about what's happened to their portfolio. You're now telling yourself, what if she fires me or he fires me? Okay. Well, what's the probability that's going to happen? Has this patient ever been angry before? Did they fire you? Are there things you can tell that patient to make them feel more comfortable in a proactive way when the market does these unpredictable things? Am I using extreme words or phrases in my thoughts like always or never? Think about it. When have you last told your partner that you live with, you always do this to me, or you never care about what I feel? Those are target words. They're trigger words that set off problems. Nothing is always or never, but we tend to use it a lot in our language. And am I assuming the worst will happen with no evidence of that? So that's number 5. Number 6, disrupt your toxic thoughts immediately, like I talked about with the rubber band, and replace them with healthy dialogue that you can make up. That's why I said you have a choice of what you're going to be thinking. For example, if your original toxic thought was, I don't know how how my difficult clients, how I'm going to deal with my difficult clients who get panicky when the markets are volatile, change it to something like this. I remain focused on my core investment values and realize that I have skills and tools to help my clients' portfolios to grow despite opening or closing or resultant market volatility. I proactively do virtual meetings with my clients and provide information for them to feel safe, or I can proactively do it if you're not now. Another example, if your original toxic thought was, how do I deal with the impact of global political events? Change that to something like this. I have been resilient and flexible in many unpredictable situations in the past, and I'll adapt to the new normal, consult expert strategists, and help my clients to thrive despite the political climate. Number 3, if your original thought was, I don't know the best way to manage work-life balance when I have so much to do and my family needs my time, change it to something like this. You know, during the pandemic, I've gotten closer and spent more time with my family. I now understand what their needs are. I'll be assertive regarding the space I need, but I'll also recognize their needs. So I'll now be able to formulate a work-life balance plan that works for all of us. Step 7 is to take another deep breath. So you're anchoring it with another deep breath. Now, this may sound like a lot, but you can do it very rapidly. And like any other skill, practice makes perfect. And developing this mental toughness skill leads to increased confidence, lower stress, fewer behavioral mistakes, and enhanced physical and mental health. When I teach this to doctors and I say fewer behavioral mistakes, that gets their ears buzzing, because the biggest thing a doctor worries about is a malpractice suit. Using this simple technique, I've helped doctors to calm themselves down so that they are less likely to perform malpractice. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've spoken rapidly. You're all champions as far as I'm concerned, but most of you don't uncover the champion that lies within until you learn how to unwrap it from its self-defeating kinds of thinking habits that have caused it. And once you change your thoughts that have undermined your confidence and have increased your stress, you'll prevent burnout, and the true champion will emerge consistently. So I told you I have some bonuses. So the first one is the book, $15. It's a $37 book if you order it from Amazon. A complimentary coaching session, if you're interested, completely confidential, no pressure, no nothing. I'm just there to answer your questions. If you're interested in getting 12 continuing education credits for an online course, my course is called Actionable Skills to Develop the Mindset of a Champion Financial Services Professional. It's got everything in there, plus everything in my book is in there. I'll give you a 20% discount because you're part of Charlie's group here. And the last thing is, if you're interested in my game-changing new client attracting magnet, how to live much longer than your kids hoped you would, my client event, I'll give you a 15% discount just because you're part of Charlie's group. So that's it. So now we can open it to more questions.
Jack, that's awesome.
Oh, by the way, I have a website, drjacksinger.com, if you want to see my website.
And I'm putting all that in the chat here too. So, Jack, I have an example of, we've got a client named Beth, and Beth is a financial advisor, but also does some similar work to what you do. And with every client we onboard, I don't get to meet a lot of our clients before they onboard with social advisors, but I get to meet them within a couple of weeks. So, we can talk about experience and things along those lines. And usually spend, 30, 45 minutes together. Beth, after our call, had a wonderful call. Beth lives in California. We both like surfing, so we had a lot of commonality. I apparently had said a couple of blocking things in our conversation with Beth, things I say that unconsciously. And so Beth scheduled more time with me after our call because we had to wrap up. And when we got on that second call, she said, "Charlie, I don't know if you're open to this at all." She said, "But you said this, this, and this while we were talking. And those, those are blocking things. Those are getting in the way of success. So here's some alternatives for you." And I appreciate that out of her like crazy. And I'm open to it. I guess my point in all this is it's not just the negative thoughts. Right now, I don't know that I said anything overtly negative, but it was like language that was not, I don't know, it was not designed for progress, right? I mean, it was
right. I'm really glad she pointed it out to you, because most people don't point things like that out.
Yeah,
but examples would be if somebody says, "Here's an idea, Charlie, that you may want to try with your social advisors," and you say, "Okay, I'll try it." Well, the word "try" is negative. Sure. Because that opens the possibility of failure. So how about "I'm going to do that" is better than "I'll try it." Okay. Yeah. So there are a lot of little things like that people like Beth and me would pick up that most people don't pick up. Yeah. And when I'm coaching someone, I pick up those kinds of things in their conversation. I can tell them, "Well, now I know why you're having this problem. You just said this to me, and this is a habit you've developed."
Yeah. And that's exactly it. I mean, I didn't say anything different to Beth that I don't say to, everybody I'm meeting for the first time. Right. And so I reinforce that stuff just with my language, and it's just being aware of it, to your point. Exactly. So I wrote down the 7 steps. I've got a number 64 rubber band that will go on my wrist when we're done here. So, and Eric says 1% better every day. And that's right, Eric, right? You're not going to change the world overnight. Right. So it's about progress. You're absolutely right. So I will share that I have seen snippets, Jack, of your client, of your client speak, of your client talk. It's awesome. So if you benefited at all from the time that we spent with Jack today, can't even imagine how good that is live, right?
Well, I hope so.
In person.
The feedback I get is pretty good.
Yeah.
Feedback, by the way, we talked about how you can get yourself screwed up emotionally. So when I was living in Las Vegas for a while, I was speaking there a lot. And I did a conference of contractors, and as I'm speaking, they're all looking at their watches. And I finally stopped speaking. And I said, what's going on? Why are y'all looking at their watches? And one of them said, can I be candid? I said, yeah, we just want to go to the casino. We don't want to hear this. And so I dismissed the whole group. Now, I could have said from then on, maybe I'm boring. Maybe people don't like what I say. Maybe I should get out of the business. I did not let myself go there. And that's the only speaking engagement in my entire career that ever had a negative thing like that. But I just let it go.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So let me make sure that I think the chat we're caught up on. I want to thank, first off, before we go, I just want to thank everybody for the interaction. I love that, right? So I talked about, Jack, you and I chatted about this yesterday, or we were prepping for today. I used to do a lot of solo webinars, right? And always value-based, of course. We're for-profit companies, so we're selling things too. But I felt like I was talking to, an empty hallway. And so this is so fun. And, my friend Katie's here. Katie and I got a call in an hour and 12 minutes, but my friend Katie's here, and she was on last month with us talking about video. And if I could, I'll plug that a little bit. Katie, you're still here. I'll plug May 11th, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Myself, Katie Braid, and a couple of other industry experts are talking about leveraging video for growth. So my role in that is helping you get the most exposure you possibly can. And Katie's chiming in. She's in Vegas. March is in Vegas. Jack, you and I both lived in Vegas at one point. So May 11th, 11 a.m., grow with the power of video. That's going to be a good one. So that's 5 industry experts. And Eric Wilson's in Florida. Me too, Eric. And Katie actually in the chat just put up the link to register for that one. So that's a good one. I'm there to help people get the most exposure for the content, but Katie is, Katie's awesome with video. If you don't know her, know her. She does a great job.
Speaking of Eric Wilson, I'd love to chat with you sometime, Eric, because Eric was very open in the chat and discussed a major illness that he had, and he thinks it was related to stress. And I've worked with that particular illness many times, Eric. So if you want to have a chat about it, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, take advantage of that, everybody. If you feel stressed from this business, from this industry, from this work, and I know that, I won't say everybody, but the majority of people do. Jack, what a generous offer to spend some time in a coaching session with them. So appreciate that.
Absolutely. Anything for you, Charlie. You're my favorite.
Listen, Jack, I do. I don't think we're on the calendar yet, but I don't, summer might be a difficult time because people are traveling, but what do you say come like September, October?
Perfect.
Let's schedule the next one. And this is wonderful. Jack, you're a wealth of information and a wealth of knowledge and experience, and my sincere gratitude for spending time with us. And, I know all the feedback that we got through chat and, from our past webinars, there's a lot of value being brought to this. So mindset's everything, you guys. And the older I get, the more I realize that.
It is. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And I know you're probably going to have the recording of this for people who missed it. And again, feel free to give me a call and we'll schedule a talk to just chat about what's on your mind. I'm sure I can help you with it.
Yeah, wonderful, Jack. And what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of post-production, a little bit of post-production on the recording. Then I'll get a link to you. You feel free to send it out. And for everybody who registered, I'll send it out to them as well.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jack. I know this time is valuable. We appreciate you spending it with us.
My pleasure, as always.